Hello, and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. Elgin is anticipating his first day of work when he gets up. He has coffee and muffins with iceberry jam while he waits for Stanton to arrive. We get a bit of a tour of the Comet on their way to the shop. Elgin gets his first view of the square and his first synesthetic storm. At the shop, we meet Buzzard for the first time. That was the first time I met Buzzard, too. Until they opened that door to the shop, I had no idea that he would be in there. But I'm glad I met him because he turned out to be a very good character. Practically everybody who ever read the book fell in love with Buzzard. Okay, how about if before you listen to the rest of this story, you subscribe to the Okanagan Reader? And how about after you've listened to this chapter, you like it? That would please me almost as much as finding Buzzard in that shop. Okay, here we go then.
Chapter 18. Elgin Goes to Work. True to his word, Stanton came the next day and took him to work. Elgin was up early, not having slept very well. In addition to some soreness, his anticipation and excitement kept waking him up throughout the night, and he finally got out of bed and went hunting for food. He found some leftover muffins and iceberry jam and figured out how to make coffee. The last time he made coffee, it was real, made from actual coffee beans, and there was gravity. This coffee maker worked on a different principle, not having gravity to do any of the work, but he got it. The only thing was, he didn't know how much to measure out and ended up making it too strong. Stanton arrived as he was having his second cup, and when he tasted the coffee, he said, "Whoa." "I know," said Elgin. "I didn't know how much to put in." "Never mind. I've never had a cup of coffee that was too strong." "Me neither. I actually like it like this." Elgin sipped and then qualified that, "maybe a little less strong for everyday use." "Same here," said Stanton. "I only have 2 or 3 cups a day, but I like them to be worth it. I normally have 4 or 5 cups unless I'm engrossed in work. Then I could drink a lot more and not know it." "I know what you mean. If there's a cup by my hand, I'll drink it." Stanton emptied his cup and took it over to rinse out. He held out his hand, and Elgin tossed his cup over. He threw it high, naturally expecting it to travel in an arc. Stanton was accustomed to microgravity and plucked it out of its straight trajectory. Then he surprised Elgin by tossing it back. He missed it, holding his hands too low, and it hit him in the chest. "That's something you're going to have to get used to, especially if you're going to play flashball." "You would think I would have caught on after last night," Elgin said. "I must have seen hundreds of passes, and they all flew straight, other than the ones with spin on them. It's something else that needs experience. Catching and throwing are done automatically. You need to retrain your reflexes." Elgin tossed the cup back, right on target. "It's easy if you're thinking about it. And soon enough you'll be doing it without thinking about it." Stanton rinsed the cups and put them away. "We all do it, and we were all like you." "Of course. In a funny way, this might be easier than learning in gravity," said Stanton. "There's one less variable to think about." "Yeah, you're right," said Elgin. After a moment's silence, he said, "Well, weren't you going to put me to work today?" "I was. We should get going if you're ready." "Ready and raring, boss." This time when they went out the door, Elgin's wings automatically opened part way in preparation for flight, rather than in response to vertigo. He let his feet leave the doorstep and he hovered, waiting for Stanton to lead the way. "Same way as last time," said Stanton, "only we'll take the left fork this time." He took off and set course, tracking a few meters off the right wall, and about the same up from the floor. Elgin fell in alongside. "You're flying well this morning," he said. "Thanks, I'm hardly sore at all, and it feels much more natural." "It is. It's even better than it was at the end of yesterday's practice." "Maybe there's something to that old saying about sleeping on it." "There could be, you know. I've heard that learning works better if you have a good sleep afterward." "It seems to have worked for me, although I wouldn't say I had a good sleep. Oh, too much excitement yesterday? Or maybe it was too much flying. How are your muscles? A bit stiff, thank you, but it wasn't the pain. And it wasn't the excitement of my big day, even though that flashball game was pretty good. It's an interesting game, isn't it? Last night's match wasn't bad, but you'll see better. It took me a while to get what they were up to, especially since there were no goals, no obvious ways to score points. But I got so I could see what they were trying to do. Elgin chuckled. I have no idea about the rules, though. When the referees blew their whistles, I just had to shrug and move on. Most of the rules are pretty obvious once you figure them out. Stanton looked at him. So, what disturbed your sleep then? Anticipation. It's always been this way when I've started something new. The night before my first day, I'm lucky to get 3 hours sleep in half-hour chunks. I know what you mean. They flew on for a while, thinking and taking in their surroundings. There were quite a few people in the corridor this morning, most going in their direction and just a few in the other. Elgin smiled and nodded at yet another one, and realized that most of them seemed to be greeting him. They weren't doing it so much with each other as far as he could see, just with him. Stanton, he said, why are all these people looking at me? Have I got a sign on my back or something? Stanton laughed. No. They can just tell that you're a new waker. They're welcoming you. How can they tell? Do I look different? They can tell by the way you fly. Is it that bad? No, but it's obviously not completely natural yet. You're still very deliberate about it. Stanton thought about it. They can see that you still have to pay close attention, and that you have to consciously do your adjustments and corrections. Elgin took a moment to observe the passers-by, nodding and smiling at those who greeted him. He compared their flying to his. I see it, he said. You're right. They're flying without even thinking about it, and I'm still overcorrecting almost every time I do something. I wouldn't say it's that bad, Stanton reassured him. Then he pointed ahead at someone coming the other way. Look at that guy. The man was moving at a moderate clip, but what surprised Elgin was that he was reading something, paying no apparent attention to his surroundings. He was making continual adjustments to his course and attitude, with small movements of his nearly closed wings, all without needing to look where he was going. They watched him go by without even glancing at them, completely engrossed in what he was reading. Stanton said it's all second nature to him now. He can do other things while he lets his cerebellum do the flying. But why doesn't he run into people? How can he tell where he's going? He doesn't have to. All he needs to do is maintain a stable flight path, which he can do instinctively, and take in enough peripheral information to stay in his lane. There are lanes? Elgin asked, looking for markers. Not officially. It's just a kind of common understanding that we all agree on. Stanton pointed out the obvious. People going this way are on this side and vice versa. Oh, right. I saw that, but never thought about it. What's not so obvious is how we set ourselves up a certain distance from the wall and the floor. I wondered how you decided that. I thought it was probably just habit. It didn't occur to me that there might be more to it. And then we separate ourselves by speed. Stanton used his hand to indicate different levels. Our lane is for regular travel at a moderate speed. Most people fly at this level. He pointed up. If you want to travel faster, or you just need to pass someone, you take the upper level. It's logical for the person doing the passing to have the best view. He nodded toward the floor. People who want to go slowly, go down there. And that guy could tell if he was in the right place with his peripheral vision. Not just his vision. Your ears can tell how close to the wall you are by the way the sounds are echoing too. Stanton fluffed up the fur on one arm. And this is good for more than just keeping us warm. We can sense things with our fur? Yes, an unforeseen secondary benefit. Stanton tried to describe it with his hands. The air, he said, acts differently up against the wall than it does when it's more free. With fur, our skin can feel the difference. That's amazing, said Elgin. It certainly is. So once you get your cerebellum trained and you tune into your peripheral senses, you'll be able to fly an automatic pilot just like that guy. That hardly seems credible right now, but I'll take your word for it. You'll be playing flashball before long, I have no doubt. He gestured ahead. We go left here. It was a T intersection, and the left fork was almost identical to the one they took twice the day before. It went on an unremarkable similarity for a while, before Elgin started to notice things. The sounds changed, as did a vague sense of pressure differential. He asked Stanton, "Is there an opening up ahead?" "You might say that." Just then it became visible far ahead. In addition to more subtle effects of sound and air pressure, the light was also brighter. It felt more active and busier. They emerged from the corridor into a vast space. There were people, maybe hundreds, everywhere and going in all directions. Elgin looked at his friend, grinning with the infectious excitement of the place. Then, without realizing it, he came to a complete stop, and Stanton had to pull him out of the flow of traffic. He looked his apology at them, and the people just smiled and nodded. They knew what was going on. He parked his friend in a safe place and stood by to wait. It looked as if Elgin was having what the psychologists called a synesthetic storm. There was so much going on, so much stimulus to all his senses at once, that all of the associated synesthetic responses were activated at the same time. They were reinforcing each other in a kind of positive interference, producing a perfect wave of perceptions. It could happen to anyone in the right circumstances, and most people experienced it at least once. It was a benign effect that rarely had any dangerous side effects. For Elgin, this was the perfect time and place for it to happen. What he was seeing was not the light that was impinging on his eyes, and it was the same for his hearing and all his other senses. He was tasting the light and seeing the smells, while at the same time he could smell the breeze of people passing in the fur on his arm. But each of those sensations and episensations triggered another response, which led to another. The result was a very bright, very noisy, very everything else amalgam that was just short of painful. His brain wasn't able to present it to him as a comprehensible whole, so for now it just passed on everything as it was happening. Gradually things began to come out of the storm. Flowing colors became people moving. A sense of a large, solid rock at his side resolved into Stanton. It got quieter, and he was able to discern individual voices calling to each other. Finally the scene fell back together for him. "Wow," he said. "Was that normal and expected too?" Normal in a sense, but not necessarily expected. Stanton's voice solidified reality. "So you didn't know this was going to happen?" "It was a possibility, but that's all." Elgin thought about that while taking a good look at the huge chamber they were in. He found it impressive. He was pleased to see that both sides of the space, as well as the floor and ceiling, were built to the golden ratio. The long dimension looked to be about 100 meters, with the height and width being just over 60. That made the end walls squares. What caught his eye now were the decorations. There were pillars, and halfway up the wall were friezes carved in bas relief. He could make out some of the carvings, and they seemed to depict events of significance from back home. Certain things from the history of their planet that were important to their lives here were engraved there. His eyes stopped at one on the far end wall, and he felt a tug when he recognized the destruction of Yellow Comet. It saddened him, but somehow it made him feel good, too. He began to notice the use of color. Unlike the corridor, where most of the colors were reflections of the people in it, or were created by glimmers from the lighting, the builders had incorporated color by design here. They were displayed prominently in the friezes, the colors illuminating their scenes and characters with striking effect. The other major use was in the columns that stood out from the walls, designed to look as if they were providing support. Elgin knew from his studies that they weren't. They were here strictly for show, as decoration, and it was done very effectively. The entrances, 3 on each long wall and 1 on each short wall, were framed by massive columns. Each wall had a different color, rich primary hues representing the 4 synesthesia comets. Directly opposite them, on the other small wall, was rich bright yellow, looking like the rising sun at a distant horizon. The long wall on his left was orange, the one on his right, where most of the activity seemed to be focused, had carvings and columns that glowed as if they were made out of huge, perfect emeralds. Elgin spun around and looked at the ruby pillars that framed the entrance they had just passed through. They were so beautiful that he could taste them. The sensation swept over his body, raising a wave of fur in its wake. He flew close to one of them and looked deep into it. The color went right through it. The ice was flawless, transparent red. Moving around the side, he could see people coming and going in the entrance, their images warped by refraction and tinged deep red, but otherwise clear. He reached out and touched the ice, and its smooth coldness just multiplied its beauty. Elgin turned to Stanton, who was quietly waiting. "This place is amazing," he said. "Yes," said his friend. "You get used to it with time, but you never get really used to it, if you know what I mean." "I think I do." Elgin took it all in and found that it was just as powerful in the whole as in its parts. "What is this place, anyway?" "We call it the Square." He held up his hand to forestall any objection Elgin might have. "I know it's not a square, but we couldn't really call it the Oblong, could we?" Elgin's first inclination was to object to the imprecise use of language. His engineer's mind didn't like it. A square and a rectangle were two distinct geometries. You might as well call a rhomboid a trapezoid. But still he approved of the name. It harkened back to a time when village life centered around a square, where people came to get the news and do business. Green Comet was a village, really, and the square was just what it needed. He looked at the bustling activity. People were transiting the open space, heading for exits, or the fronts of what must be places of work and business. Many of he didn't know what to call them, so he thought of them as shops, had clusters of people at their fronts. Some appeared to be engaged in earnest conversations, but most looked relaxed and happy, just enjoying the pleasures of company and gossip. Most of the activity was taking place within a few meters of the floor, with only a few people flying higher to get around a crowd, or, as he saw once, to get down from an opening high on the wall. "There's so much I want to ask you," he told Stanton, "and I'll tell all. But right now we might as well get to the shop." "That's one of the things," Elgin said, falling in. They were headed to the right. "Is that what these places are called?" "That's one word. We call our place a shop as in workshop. Other places called shops are where people shop. They can also be called stores. Then there are offices, which we could also call our place if we wanted. Restaurants and theaters. Some of these entrances are for apartments. See those balconies?" Elgin looked up. The balconies were like the place he had seen the person coming down from. "It looks like everything happens here." "Pretty well. This is where everyone wants to be, where everyone wants to work." Stanton qualified it, as a first approximation anyway. He responded to Elgin's questioning expression. "F.A., everyone wants to be here, but there are always times when people want to do things quietly, away from the eyes of their friends and neighbors." Elgin nodded. He could understand that indeed, but F.A.? "Oh, right," said Stanton. "That's a figure of speech that came into the language here. It's short for first approximation. I guess we found ourselves using that phrase a lot, so we came up with an abbreviation." They were approaching the green side. Stanton appeared to be heading for the furthest of the three entrances. When they got there, he stopped so Elgin could admire the emerald column as he had the ruby one. Even though everything was green instead of red, and it evoked different feelings and flavors, he still found the sensation powerful and profound. They carried on through and up the corridor about 20 meters, until they came to a doorway on the right. Stanton showed him in, and they entered the shop together. It was large and brightly lit. Like all the living spaces in the Comet, it had a high ceiling, over 5 meters. The room was square, about 10 meters on each side. It was furnished, or littered if you were being honest, with utilitarian neglect. There were some cabinets and chairs and tables, but they had an air of being pushed aside and forgotten. There were only 2 areas that looked as if they saw regular use. One had a cooler, some cupboards, a sink and a coffee maker. The other dominated the center of the room. It was obviously their work table, and it appeared to be covered with work in progress. One of the high stools next to it was occupied by a lanky, bony man who looked like a bird perched there. "Buzzard," Stanton called. The man didn't respond, so Elgin asked, "Buzzard?" Stanton chuckled. "His comet name is Buzzard. And look at him." Elgin could see what he meant. With his long body, and perched as he was leaning over his work, he did bring a vulture to mind. "Buzzard," Stanton called more sharply. The figure at the table started, straightening up and turning wide eyes on them. Elgin could tell that he saw them, but it was obvious that he was barely registering it. "Got something you need to finish there?" asked Stanton. Buzzard nodded, his eyes sliding back toward the table. "Right, you finish up then. I'll introduce you later." He swung back to his work, and Elgin thought that he probably forgot they were there almost right away. He asked Stanton, "Is that what I'll be doing?" "Yes and no. You'll be working with Buzzard. Technically he'll be your boss," he added. "You'll take direction from him, but we really all work together as a team." He indicated the whole shop. "We all do whatever needs to be done, but each to their own talents. Buzzard has the most incredible talent for detail I've ever seen, for instance." "He can certainly focus," Elgin said. "Yes. Sometimes I think he kills bugs by staring them to death." Elgin could see a trace of a fond smile as Stanton was looking at Buzzard. "As for you, my young friend, whatever you can bring remains to be seen. I have high hopes for you, but we'll see what happens when you start dealing with real problems." He took his new employee on a tour of the shop. He showed him a cabinet he could use for any personal things he might want to leave at work. There was a bathroom with a shower for those inevitable marathon projects. At the galley he said, "Don't use Buzzard's things," pointing them out by the sink and in the cooler. He gave Elgin a look, and there was no need to explain. Finally they came to a door. "This is my office," he said. "If the door is open, you can come in any time, but if it's closed," he emphasized, "then stay away from it unless the comet's on fire." "Gotcha," said Elgin. "If you don't mind my asking," he ventured, "what's your talent?" "I'm in charge," said Stanton. "I make all the big decisions, and I take all the credit." He winked, softening it, but Elgin could tell there was a sardonic truth to it. They heard signs of life over by the table, and turned to see that Buzzard had straightened up again. He appeared to be talking to himself. Elgin thought he heard him say, "5 times, that's 5 times, 5. Stanton called out, "Buzzard, I see you're done." The face that swiveled atop the long curving neck was wearing a delighted smile. "That's 5, boss, all 5, all good." "That's good. Come on over here. I want you to meet your new partner." As improbable as it seemed, looking at his long, gangly body, Buzzard was a graceful flyer. He turned his upper body in their direction and gave a single half flap of his wings. The rest of his body followed as if he was towing a banner. When he arrived, it felt as if they had to wait a while for all of him to get there. That unconscious comfort in his body and the open, happy look on his face immediately won Elgin over. "Buzzard, you remember me telling you about Elgin. Well, here he is at last, eager to get to work." Buzzard stuck out his hand. "Elgin knows when it's right, when it's wrong, right or wrong." His handshake was light but firm. "Pleased to meet you, Buzzard," said Elgin. "Buzzard. Boss calls me Buzzard. That's my work name." "Okay, Buzzard. Stanton tells me that you're good with details." "Good with details," Buzzard nodded, preening a little. "Did I hear right? Did you just do something for the 5th time?" 5 times. All right, all 5. Stanton interjected. "That's Buzzard's baseline. If it comes out right 5 times, he gives it a conditional pass." "That's right. 5 times conditional pass. 10 times if it's important. If boss says it's important." Elgin was impressed. "I admire your focus, Buzzard. I'm glad I'll be working with you." "Glad I'll be working with you too, Elgin. Knows if it's right or wrong, Elgin." He looked at Stanton. "Boss says Elgin is good, so we'll see." Elgin and Stanton exchanged sheepish smiles. Elgin could see that working with Buzzard was going to be interesting, to say the least. But he had no doubt that he was a good engineer, or Stanton wouldn't have him here. "Okay, Buzzard, I've got some work to do. You show the new recruit around." Stanton went to his office, but he left the door open. Buzzard completed the tour that Stanton had begun. Elgin had already been around the outside, and now he got a look at the work table, obviously the most important part of the room, and definitely the most interesting. It was oblong, about 5 meters by 3. The sides had drawers and shelves and slots, punctuated by knee-holes. The top, barely visible now under sheets of perma-paper, had sections that could be tilted for drawing on, and the whole thing could be lighted from underneath. Elgin learned where his tools would be. "Those are yours. You can use any of those," said Buzzard. "These are mine. I use these. Only me." He was standing protectively, as if he was shielding them. He had an anxious look on his face, but also apologetic, as if he knew he looked unreasonable. "I understand," said Elgin. He looked right into his new workmate's eyes, made real contact. "I understand." He saw Buzzard relax, the look of simple delight returning to its accustomed place. "Say," he said, "is that a Sharp-Right?" Buzzard snatched it up and held it out for Elgin to see. "Sharp-Right," he said. "Best pen for the job." Elgin recognized the company's slogan, just as he remembered the drafting pen, even though it was 80 years and more since he had seen either one. "May I?" he asked, holding out his hand. When Buzzard hesitated, he said, "Never mind." Buzzard struggled for a moment, then gravely extended his pen. "It's okay. Elgin understands." Elgin took the pen, hefted it, felt its mass and familiar contours. Handing it back, he said, "That's a good pen, Buzzard." "Best pen for the job," said Buzzard, almost snatching it back. He examined it closely, then, satisfied, clipped it securely to the desk at his workstation. His glance showed Elgin both challenge and apology. When he saw no censure or disappointment in Elgin's face, he continued staring for a long moment to be sure, then smiled. "It's okay," he said firmly. "Elgin understands." He finished by showing Elgin what they were working on, all the bits and pieces of different projects scattered over the desktop, waiting at various stages of completion for Buzzard's penetrating attention. When they were done their circuit of the table, he asked, "What's wrong? What's not right?" He was plainly struggling to get the right words. "Right and wrong, Elgin knows." He trailed off, forcibly stopped himself, although his mouth kept moving. "Well, it's not quite that simple," said Elgin, then hurried to add when Buzzard's face fell, "but there was one thing that I noticed." He flew across to the other side of the table and picked up a piece of paper half covered in precise and very neat script. "I happened to look at it, and it stood out." "What's wrong? What?" "There's nothing really wrong with it," said Elgin. "It's just that it's—" He searched for the right word while Buzzard watched him with a good imitation of his namesake. "Incomplete." Buzzard's face lit up. "Yes, incomplete. Not completed. Not done." He went on to explain how this was a first estimate on the problem of lateral shear forces in the contact area where the two comets would be joined. They didn't have all the data they needed yet because the surveys of the structure and properties of the materials in the contact zones weren't completed. "Incomplete," he said. "F.A." It took Elgin a second. Then he remembered. "Oh, right. First approximation." "F.A.," said Buzzard. "F.A." He nodded to himself for a while, then said, "Elgin knows, right and wrong." It left Elgin with a sense of gratitude and relief, as if he'd passed a test. "But it's only because that piece of paper happened to catch my eye," he told Buzzard. "If I hadn't looked at it, then I wouldn't have known anything was wrong with it." "Maybe. Could be. Maybe it caught your eye because it was wrong." Elgin laughed. "I don't think so. It's not magic." "How do you know?" asked Buzzard with a sly look. "Come on, Buzzard. I promise you it's not magic. It's just the way my brain works." "Then why that piece? Why not another piece? Why that one?" "There were other ones," Elgin stressed. "Plenty of other pieces caught my eye. That was the only one that didn't look right." Buzzard mulled it over, his eyes roving over the table. Elgin waited patiently while he sorted it all out. Finally, he looked up, the delighted smile back in place. "It's good," he said. "All good. Elgin knows, but it's not magic. Not magic." "Yeah," said Elgin. He looked around, ready to get on, but Buzzard stopped him. My brain's not magic either, he said. Not magic, just the way it works. How do you know? Asked Elgin with a mischievous smile. Buzzard peered at him, then started to laugh. Elgin laughed with him, realizing that he was relieved to find he had a sense of humor. Then he was embarrassed to have worried about it. Because Buzzard acted a little strangely and, yes, looked strange too, Elgin found himself ready to think he wouldn't be normal in other ways. That galled him, and he chastised himself for it. He swore a silent oath that he would never allow himself to condescend to this man again. "What's wrong, Elgin?" asked Buzzard. "Right and wrong, Elgin?" "Nothing's wrong, Buzzard. I was just realizing, thanks to you, that neither of us has a magic brain." "Not magic," affirmed Buzzard. "Just the way they work. They work." "They sure do. Speaking of which, do you mind if I look at what you were working on when we came in?" "Sure," Buzzard said, flying back over the table to get it and turning back without stopping. He was handing the paper to Elgin almost before his feet made the turn on the other side, or so it seemed. "All 5, all good, nothing wrong." Elgin's first glance confirmed that, but he wasn't looking for errors. He was quite sure there wouldn't be any. This was the first thing he had seen Buzzard doing, and he wanted to have a good look at it. He let himself into the dense patterns of perfect script and wandered there for a while, Buzzard waiting patiently. Normally when Elgin saw good calculations or accurate drawings, he felt it in his body as well as just knowing it. His joints aligned themselves, and his innards nested comfortably with each other. The immaculate detail and precision of Buzzard's work took him beyond that. The symmetries that he sensed in this piece of engineering reached deeper into his body than usual, almost down to the level of his cells. He felt the stress line, the lines of energy flowing smoothly through him. It felt as if his insides were having a nice, refreshing shower. He surfaced and looked at Buzzard. "That was wonderful," he said. "Thank you." "All good?" "Definitely all good. Maybe the best all good I've ever seen." Buzzard grinned his delighted grin. "Elgin knows," he affirmed. "All good." "Yes," agreed Elgin, "and no magic required." "No magic brains," said Buzzard, and they both had a good laugh at their new inside joke. Beyond the open door to his office, Stanton listened to the easy laughter and smiled with gratification.